two-quarter. And perhaps the approval of the agenda, please. Sorry. Councillor Dive. Councillor Smith is doing.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
Dive Smith. Motion. All those in favor? Contrary. Motion carries. Adoption of the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting. Okay. Councillor Stewart. Okay. Second. Okay. Councillor Mulder. All those in favor? Thank you. Now, of course, as everyone knows, we have some discussion and decisions to make with regards to the Station House project. The pause button was hit because we wanted to get some very clear focus on what the final product should look like and what the final budget should look like. And certainly appreciate all the efforts of staff and Advantage Hope and all the volunteers to date. We now have a structurally sound building that is well on its way, but obviously some decisions have to be made. So I think most members of the public were at previous meetings where we had this discussion. So we have to, of course, decide on the final budget, the scope of the work, the scheduling, and identifying some stakeholders, and then, of course, the outreach to speaking to the stakeholders and so forth. But we do have within the package tonight, we do have a update on the finances from Mr. Portis, just a review of previously tabled information, so we could call the Mr. Portis to just go over it quickly. That would be great.
Thank you, Richard. The report I prepared for council is basically a recap on the Station House. As you're aware, I guess probably before my time, but last year there was two amounts that were allocated to the project, which totaled $200,000. And when we had our initial budget meetings earlier this year, we had put the $200,000 in for the Station House, and then subsequent meeting with the availability of the Rural Dividend Fund and other discussions, the budget actually went up to $900,000 on the project, and it's was to be funded by the Rural Dividend Grant, which was $500,000. We had $192,000 out of reserves, and we had $208,000 of general revenue for 2016 that was going to pay for that $900,000 of upgrades. At the end of May, council had directed staff not to go ahead with the grant application, so the project was put on hold. And so when that part of the formula for the funding came out, you would take the amount from reserves and general revenue, which totaled $392,000, was what realistically is in the budget for 2016. That we have available funds. And to date, when I prepared this report, we had spent in 2016 $173,000 and change. So basically that's leaving about $215,000 if council was to go ahead at this point in time for 2016 for available funds in this year's budget. We basically only have one reserve that we could draw from on this project. It's our future expenditure reserve. And at the start of the year, there was about just under $420,000 in that reserve. So if you take out the $192,000 that we had originally in the budget, there's about $227,000 that would be available out of that reserve to go towards this project or what have you. Keeping in mind that would drain the reserve. We don't have any other reserve that's really applicable to do in this kind of project. We have the infrastructure replacement reserve, but we're using that more, for roads and streets and such. So available funds, I've noted there in my report. So that's basically what we have to work with for this year.
I guess the natural first step would be, where does council see the budget for this project? And I guess we can kind of, in some ways, work backwards from there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering, I guess we can start with the budget, but, and then work back from there. But we've already allocated some funding, we know what's available, so, is the thought that we're going to change what we've already budgeted? Like, I'm not really clear on that, so.
Well, I mean, some of the numbers discussed were obviously, the original plan was to apply for the rural
Grants.
dividends grant. Council, the majority of council did not have the stomach to apply for that because the number, based on the quantity surveyors figures, was larger than we had anticipated, so we did not move forward on that.
That's right.
Which is fine, it's obviously the prerogative of council. So I guess my question to council would be, is the $215,000 the amount that we're comfortable spending on this project for this year? Because I think the public is keen on making sure that, we have a clearly identified budget. I know the Advantage Hope Crew did an excellent job at leading the charge of getting the project structurally sound, the building, contrary to what a few folks are saying, that the building is structurally sound now, and obviously needs some tweaking, but there's no impending doom as far as the structural integrity of the building. So a lot of the heavy lifting's been done already. The inside has been exposed so that we know more as to what is required. And also, at the last council meeting, there was a discussion that when we have a public stakeholder meeting, that we would try to host it within the station house building so that people can take a little tour and get a better flavor for what the building is and what it can be, so on and so forth. It was also, I know a couple of members of council were keen on, commissioning the services of an architect or getting solid mechanical drawings. I think we need clarity on that, where council is, looking to go there, because I think this is, quite frankly, I think this is the kind of meeting we have to put this to bed. We have to provide clear council direction, because we don't want this project to sit dormant any longer, and I'm kind of keen on seeing additional action there sooner than later, personally, and I think probably most of us are in that camp. Councillor Dudley, you had your hand up there?
Well, yeah, I guess yes and no. I just, I probably didn't realize that we were going to solidify a number tonight. I thought we were really talking about the process in which consultation would occur and what would we be getting for $215,000. So I just have a sort of a lot of just question mark type things, and I'm wondering if we're putting the cart before the horse in the sense that maybe we need to do public consultation before we actually determine a figure attached to that, because I know there's questions around, user groups and purposes of that space. I mean, we know it's the tourist info center. I mean, that is sort of the end game there, but whatever multi-purposes might it be used for, and I guess I'm just wondering if we should do consultation before we put a number to it. Like, I don't know.
I mean, that's really an option. I'm just presenting it as an idea because I think the majority of the public that has concerns is pertaining to the finances of the project. Most people will agree that it's a very viable project. It's a great idea, it's a great project, but obviously everyone's concerned about the amount of money being spent. So, I'm obviously at the discretion of council here as to where the majority goes, is where, as mayor, I have to go as well. So, Councilor Erickson.
Through you. Number one, when you do a project like this, you have to know what it's going to cost before you can consult. And this is our building, it's not the community's. It's District of Hope's building. So we have to put together what it's going to cost us to build it. We don't have a clue because we have nobody that's given us the cost. We have nobody. An architect would do that. We have the surveyor. He was way out on a limb. And like it was said, that they always go very, very high when you're doing grant applications to make sure we cover our costs. This project, in my experience, it's going to cost, to finish the building will cost approximately another $500,000. but we don't know that for sure until we actually get an architect to do some drawings, and then we can get prices on it. You can't go ahead and do it if you don't know what you're doing. You don't even know what the electrical's gonna cost, and none of the mechanical, we don't know, because we don't know what mechanical we're gonna put in. And that's a real quandary that I'm in, is if we don't get some drawings of some sort. I brought again, these are the drawings that building that we're just doing right now in Lacombe. Look at that, for drawings, for three 8-plexes, Lacombe, and it's complicated, and we got an exact price on this, so we know exactly right to the dollar what it's gonna cost us. Because every contractor actually came in, electrical contractor said it's gonna cost this much to the electrical, this much for the plumbing, this much for the underground, this much for the, it's all bidded out. And so we know exactly, before we even dig anything, before we even tore the buildings down that were on the property, we knew exactly what it's gonna cost. And that's what we've been struggling with for over a year. We don't know what it's gonna cost, because we don't have any drawings. We got the engineered drawings, but that was a cart before the horse. We should have the architectural drawings first, and then the engineer comes in and structuralizes it. That's my experience anyway. And I think it's gonna cost, just in my mind, if we're gonna go forward with this project, we've gotta set at least $500,000 aside. And that would be a mediocre, it wouldn't be a high-class building, it would be a beautiful building.
Well, I just share a couple personal thoughts here. Now, certainly you have a lot of expertise in construction based on your involvement in construction with your brother's company and so on. So I'm certainly not going to rival that level of expertise, but I think the one thing to me that I don't necessarily think we need an architectural drawing. I think a very good mock-up of all the mechanical and electrical needs is very important. That part is imperative. If we can get architectural input for a reasonable amount, the $10,000 to $15,000 bracket, that would obviously make sense. But I know the initial estimates were considerably higher, so I'm certainly not keen on spending $70,000 to $110,000 on architectural drawings for a building that's already standing and that's already structurally sound. I just, I'm just keen on making sure that work is not duplicated as we do the work, so we know exactly what the final product will be, and we can identify that. And when work takes place, it's only done once.
Okay, so with this building, we haven't even talked to an architect, so we don't even know what the cost is going to be. He would go in, we already have engineered drawings. The building we have engineered drawings, because I saw them up there. Okay, so he would take those engineered drawings, and he would alter them to design what we want, and then we'd have to have maybe 2 people or 3 people to tell him what we actually want. We tell him what our budget is, number one, that's what you'll have to know. Then we'll tell him what we want. The building is quite a simple building. It's basically just bathroom walls squared off, and then 3 or 4 walls downstairs. It's a simple building for him to do architectural. I talked to the architect that does this building. I talked to my brother over it, and I said, what would it cost to bid it? Because he knows that building quite well. We were up there. He said, it wouldn't cost. He would be surprised if this architect did it. It would be under $20,000, because especially if you've got the engineer drawings that he can take the template off. And so I think we should actually get someone to come and bid it. Now, it's with the District of Hope, so I know how those guys work. Prices changes with the district. And this guy works basically for us. He's kind of an in-house guy.
And for us being like your brother and yourself.
Yeah. But I just know that it's not a complicated building up there, but we need to have things written down so people can get on it. Otherwise, we can't get accurate bids. We'll never know what the thing's going to cost. That's what scares me, and that's what concerns me a lot.
Well, I think there's a certain amount of urgency too to get the exterior envelope fixed up nicely so that you can make use of the good weather, because you obviously don't want to be messing around with the exterior when it's raining. So, deciding what the exterior should look like should be a pretty simple process overall. So, that's the kind of thing I'm worried about. Maybe I'm oversimplifying a complex issue, but it's the kind of thing I'm worried about.
But for example, with the exterior, we could go in and put hardy board on the outside like we were talking, and new windows. But that doesn't really tell where your electrical plugins are going to go, where your outside lighting is going to go, and what kind of doors you're going to put in, what kind of windows you're going to put in. Yes, you do have hardy board. Now, what type of hardy board are you going to put on? Is it painted. You know, there's a whole thing, this is what the architect does, he designs it, and then he comes to us with a preliminary drawing, and he says, what do you think? And I think that would be the time when we have the open house up there and say, this is a preliminary drawing, he's saying it's gonna cost us whatever the amount of money to, 500,000, 50,000. And then we have an idea, at least people can see this is what it's gonna look like. Because there's a lot to do, a lot of planning to do before you start. I mean, it takes 9 months to do this right here, planning.
Councillor Stewart?
I just have a question for staff. I'm just wondering, is there a rule or regulation, building code-wise, for a publicly funded building that we need an architectural design? I'm not familiar with the rule.
No, I don't believe there is a rule or regulation requiring us to have an architect.
Under the building codes for a publicly funded building?
As long as it satisfies the building inspector and she signs off on it.
Okay, so
We're
no
in compliance
definite.
with the codes.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Okay, so if that were my building, if that were my personal building, I could go ahead and do the big remodel without any drawings? Not likely. Not likely. I would be very surprised if that was my commercial building, the district would let me, the building inspector would let me go ahead just with the building permit with no drawings. No, I'd be surprised that we're that stuck in this town.
Mr. Dickon?
Your worship, through you, when I was at the building with the building inspector on Friday, I specifically asked her, do we need architectural drawings to get this building done? And she said absolutely not. I asked her in her opinion, does she think we need an architect drawing to complete this building? And she said, no, you don't absolutely need an architectural drawing. It could be done. We were looking at the Kirchhoff drawings, and I said, looking at these bathroom remodel drawings, could a builder come in and actually renovate those bathrooms based on these drawings? Because there's measurements, there's everything there. She said, yes, typical builder, a good builder could come in and do it.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So does it, off those drawings, does it tell you what type of toilets and urinals and counters and lighting and doors and floor and walls? Does it tell about that?
No, it does not go into that detail,
I know.
but I'm speaking strictly of the structure, the framing.
But that's what the architect does.
I know that.
The architect does that, and that's how you get the pricing. That's how you can get a pricing. You can't get pricings if you don't have something written down. I mean, we may not have to have an architect, we have to have some type of drawing. So some type of layout where when a person comes in to bid, say electrical, he wants to know how many plugs are gonna be there, where they're gonna be placed, what type of close TV circuitry you're gonna have, or communication system. He needs to know all that so he can price it out. And that's how we're gonna get an accurate price. I don't know how we're gonna get an accurate price if we don't. Unless we have a contractor that says, I'll do it, and you just tell me what to do. I don't know anybody that will do that. So I've talked to 3 contractors over that building already, and all 3 of them want to even get involved without having something wrong.
Mr. Forlowski, Councillor Battle, Councillor Miller.
I was thinking it is potentially possible to get a reasonable expectation on price that could lead to a contract. If the council could agree, for example, on a draft budget, tonight moving forward, say 700,000, I'm just ballparking. We have 423 available in this year's budget, but we know we won't get all the work done this year physically, so we could augment that by 213 in next year's budget. Let's just say that's the case. Then what we could do, or you could decide to do, for example, is to, okay, here's our budget, 700,000 or whatever you decide tonight, potentially. We already have some engineering drawings, some renderings, and a partially completed building, which meet expectations of some people, if not most people in the district. I don't know, but I suspect so. So in the consultation, for example, council could then get the feedback on, is this actually what the people want? Do they want the museum and the tour center? I believe they do there. Are the features good? You know, what would they like for an exterior, et cetera, et cetera. That feedback could come back to you as council, having confirmed a draft budget and any major particularities you want of that building. For example, you want to ensure according to the building code that you have the handicapped accessible bathrooms, etc. So you could, for example, dictate or set a guideline tonight or after the public hearing, for example, okay, the public's okay with the concept. The budget seems okay, maybe 700,000, maybe more, you can deliberate. Then we can come back and Kevin, for example, can lead an exercise once council authorizes to either go to some sort of RFP format to construction companies as a whole to take it on as a single project, or potentially Kevin could break it out then and do it more direct control under the district. But at this point, like someone, council and staff, we have discussed this a little bit. I think the key point tonight is to get a draft budget sort of decided. And then we recommend that you can move forward from there, because you will determine what is out of scope and what is affordable.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dybel and Councillor Miller.
No, I think I'm good for now after hearing that, so I'll just listen.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Councillor Miller.
Thank you. I want to kind of reel it back in. We're talking about Councillor Erickson's words were big remodel and $700,000, and I don't think we need to go there. I still think we need to decide the scope of the project, because we're talking about big remodels. Those are making assumptions that that's the decision that we've taken, and we still haven't done that. I want to see us bring it back down to a reasonable level at a reasonable cost. In my mind, what I'd like to see accomplished is some of the components there, but obviously the things that we need to do are the interior walls have to be insulated and redone, the flooring, the exterior. I'd like to, whether we take that siding off and replace it or put party board or whatever over top of it, whatever the lowest cost, longest lasting option would be. And then of course with doing the walls, then we look into the electrical plugs and lighting and the HVAC system. I think we get that information, we keep referring back to how many outlets, where do they go, where are the lights, all that sort of thing. Those are the questions that we ask of Advantage Hope, who will be operating out there. The bathrooms, I think that we can stick with the drawings that Kirkhoff had there, that expanded the current washroom facilities, included a family handicap accessible washroom, which is going to be more than sufficient, that meets building code, and leaves enough room for office space, which is also an important part of this building. I think that's what we need to do, and I don't think that all of that's going to come into the $700,000 range. I'd like to figure out how to get those numbers, but I'm hearing from people, I've been talking to people myself, that for $200,000 we could probably get a lot of those sort of finishing works done. We're not talking about new windows, we're not talking about new doors. The intent of the project all along was to simply move in from one old building to another one. I think if we put another couple $100,000 into that building, we would be far better off than we would if we were putting any money into the current visitor center. It'll do what we want it to do, which is be that showcase and entrance to town, be a functional building that we can be pleased with. If we want to do other things in the future, that's something that we could probably fundraise for and work on down the road. But we've got a lot of things in this district that need attention, and I don't think we should be putting all our dollars into that station house. I'm a big fan of the project, but I don't want to see it get out of hand. And I think that we've let it get out of hand by keep talking about a complete remodel. I'm not interested in bulldozing it and starting up a new building, but that's almost what we're doing when we're doing this sort of size of remodel. So I really want to see this come in at a reasonable cost. I've been thinking about it ever since we started talking about Station House. How much money is too much money to put into that? I'm jumping all over the place, but I'm thinking what we have there, like John, you did mention we have $400,000 in the budget, but I think it shows here we're going at the 215, 391.
Sorry, you do, if you utilize the reserves, the future expenditure reserves, you could get, you could get 423.
Isn't that where that 215 is coming out of right now?
And plus the money we've already spent comes to about that, yeah.
Well, the money already spent is spent, and it was already in the budget. Anyway, I believe that.
The way I read it was there was 215,000
Like,
out of the current budget.
if you go on to page 1 of my report, you see that if you take the grant out of the picture, we had,
392.
we had $400,000
$400.
available in 2016, of which we spent 173, leaving the 215.
That's how I read that.
That's
how
why
I
we're-
understood it.
So we don't have 400 because we spent 173.
Yeah, where there was still some funds available is if you go and basically drain the
Clean out the
reserve,
reserve.
which has 227.
Which I'm not interested in doing.
Yeah.
So-
I just put that figure out as just a number.
Yeah. So let's have that discussion about how big of a project do we want to make this. That's my feelings, is that we don't need to do a complete remodel of the building. The reason I was in favor in the past about going with a bigger project was because of the fire separation. We were told that we had to put in fire separation if we were going to start that kind of remodeling. Well, that's since been clarified, and that was a very much so determining factor in how I thought back then. That's been clarified, that we don't need that fire separation if the use downstairs is, well, if it's unused. First off, we don't need anything, we can move in ready today. Well, not today, but you know what I mean. And then we can have those discussions down the road and see where we need to go. Maybe we don't want to have a wood finishing room down there, or maybe we do, but that's part of the scope of the project that we need to talk about, because that's ultimately going to determine how much money we're putting into it. So in my opinion, we don't need to make it that big of a project. I just want to get it finished up to a point where it's usable, functional. It's better than what we've got now, 10 times better, in a much better location. That's where I'm at. I'd like to hear some discussion around that.
And I certainly think as the discussion continues, we have to, what I'm particularly keen on is a durable exterior envelope, because given our wet climate, I mean, I'm not into throwing a lot of money at a facility that, you know, 5-10 years from now is going to be a rotten mess. So new windows, proper siding, durable siding, proper drainage so that there's no, you know, additional issues with the structure. I think that's key, because we can enhance the interior over time if we have to suit our needs. But I think a durable exterior envelope is of key importance, because if that goes sideways on us, then obviously whatever we do inside is kind of a waste of money. Councillor Crop and Councillor Erickson.
Thanks. I'm kind of getting a sense that we're kind of on the same page in terms of we want to only spend pretty much what we've allocated in the budget, in terms of the 215, considering the money we've already spent. So that's kind of good. Where I'm falling off the wagon here is that I'm feeling really frustrated. I want to get it done, but on the other hand, we've taken that approach where we want to get on the horse and ride the whole way so far, and we've not come to the first step here. We need to have some consensus of what we want this thing to look like, how much use we're going to get out of it, so we know what we're actually building. Is it just a basic move in, slap some siding on, everybody throw a number in the hat as to how much we want to spend, or are we actually going to do something where, I mean, I think of the park. We had public input, the council's input, we came together in a decision where we decided we liked those nice seats, we liked the overhang thing where the bus stops and all that other stuff happened in the park. Well, we figured out that this is what we wanted our community to look like. Now we're talking about the best part of the community right up at the corner where we've all wanted that to be the tourism, or well, a lot of us have anyhow, tourism museum spot. And now we're saying, well, let's hurry up and get it done, and well, we'll spend this much money just so we can weatherproof it, and let's get going. Well, that's kind of not good enough for me. Sorry, I think that we need to really have that's why I wanted to have somebody come in, spend a little bit of money on that to pull us together and get us in the right format. Right now, we're still where we were 3 months ago.
Councillor Erickson, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, just from response to Scott's, he talked about putting new siding on. Well, it'll be very senseless to put new siding on if we don't do windows and doors. Because how are you going to finish if you have to put new windows in 5 years down the road or 2 years down the road? It's impossible. You have to take the siding off. And so we're just spending money for nothing. If we're going to do this new siding, if we don't do anything, don't finish the siding for the windows, we're not gonna do it. But if you're gonna finish the inside, when you put new windows in, you have to take all the moldings off and you have to restructure, reframe the windows, or else you have to get the windows made to that specific size. And they might, I don't know what the size are, windows usually come stock sizes, and then they'd have to make them to custom sizes. So it'd be, I think it would be a mistake if we put siding on without windows and doors. That's why I'm thinking, if we're gonna do this, we have to get the number of what we're gonna spend. If we're gonna spend $200,000, you won't have the money to finish that building. Or 250, whatever. There's not enough money to finish that building. You won't be able to do the exterior and the windows and doors and the interior, well, especially with electrical. And if anybody's working downstairs, if the downstairs is occupied, you have to put fire separation in. That is for sure. That's 100%. No one occupies it, you don't have to. If it's just where you turn the electrical panel off and the furnace is down, you don't have to put it. But if you put somebody down there, there has to be fire separation. That's 100%.
Okay, Mr. Dickon?
I was just wanted to add for context, extrapolating from the Kale report, if you were to just do siding, windows and doors, it'd be about $220,000 just for that component.
I agree with that.
Good to know. Mr. Kamoski?
If I can, for the general public here as well. You remember originally this was a phased project on an affordability basis. So after phase one originally, it was gonna be threadbare, but it was gonna be occupied. It was gonna be functional. And then council directed a change in that direction. So that's where we're at, and that's fine. But, so, I don't think the impression some may get that there was the wholesale chaos in the project is absolutely correct. Because there was an approach taken, and it was agreed to by council that this was a phased approach.
Yeah, and our quantity surveyor also indicated we got good value for the money. When he did analysis of the, potential future work, we looked at the work that was done and thought we got good value for our money. That's correct, Mr. Dickon?
Correct.
Yeah. So we can rest easy on that front. Councillor Smith?
Okay, couple questions, and statements too. If we went through the RFP process with a set budget number, could we get, because right now we're bare bones in the building, say, could we not get a contractor to put their drawings out to see for a concept, say, okay, we want to redo the siding, we want to redo the inside of the building, and through that, provide us drawings, and then we bring these drawings to our public consultation and say, this contractor wants to do this is the look that they have, this is the look this contractor has, this is the look this contractor has, if it's all within the budget, obviously, and go that way with the project, instead of hiring an architect, us spending the money, let the people that might be interested in this project, let them spend the money, that shows their commitment probably to this project. We might get nobody, because they think there's not enough money in the budget, but if they are serious about the project, we can get those drawings from them, let them spend the money, and then we can move forward on. Is that a possibility?
Through you, your worship, yeah, for sure. That would be basically putting out an RFP for a design build, and then see what comes back.
Yeah. Okay, a couple more questions, or one other question too. Is in agreement, I think we've come to the point that I agree with Council Medlock, that all of a sudden we went and did a tour of I wasn't there, but we did a tour of the scope of council's change, which is fine, we did change it, but I think we do need to go back to what Mr. Fortolowski said, and I like the phased approach. That's when I was on board with this project the most. So when we had that phased project, like we said, we do have an older building we're in now, get into an older building that we're at now, into this newer, older building. And there's also potential, once we get in there, we can resell that other project, or other business, or property, sorry, and invest possibly back into this. So I think there's unique opportunities that we're zoning in on just spending just all our money that we have in the bank account. I think there's money that will come that we could spend down the road as well onto this project. So yeah, those are my two thoughts. And I do I'd be comfortable with what we have left, not going into reserves as a budget for $215,391.
Councillor Devil?
So I like the approach of going to the public, as Councillor Crawford said, and talking about a list of specifics. So what is it that the public wants to see? So we would have our stakeholder input session and the public consultation input session. So have a list of specifications of the building, so siding, windows, doors, 4 stalls in the women's bathroom, 2 in the men, or vice versa, however we want to design that, and then we would create a list of must-haves, and then a list of nice-to-haves, and then we could go out to a design build. And then we could find out from interested parties what they could come up with for our dollar value. So I'm sort of thinking that I would like to first of all hear from the public first around what they would like to see. You know, with that input, what the stakeholders would like to see, and then we can go from there. That's my thoughts at this point in time. Because maybe, you know, there's things that we would like to have, but the public are necessarily not saying, you know, maybe it's something different. So I would like to go through that process. I'm not sure where we're at in that facilitated process with the consultant.
Actually, when you were on vacation.
Oh, I was on vacation.
We did not have a consultant, so that's the.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
sorry.
So you missed all the fun.
I missed all that.
You missed all the fun. Yeah. The way I would suggest we look at this, we look at the costing here, 2 areas. We look at the exterior envelope fixed to a high quality standard so that whatever work we do on the inside is preserved. And then what we do inside, there's obviously a lot of latitude. We can do sort of a Chevy Sprint version or a Cadillac version, depending what the community desire is. But I think the exterior envelope, properly preserved, properly done to a high quality standard is very important. And then if we, on the inside, then there's lots of different elements we can include. But I think unless the exterior is properly fixed, it's just a waste of time even talking about the inside.
So follow up then on that. So is there going to be public consultation and stakeholder input?
Oh yeah,
There will be,
yeah.
okay. It'll just be sort of self-directed by staff, okay. So I'm wondering then if we can come up with, whether it's a survey that's posted online or it's input, however people want to give input of what we want to see as specifics to this project. I'm just wondering how that facilitation will go, I guess. You know, I'm wanting to have every avenue for people to have opportunity, whether it's at a public consultation or online.
The conversation that we had at the last council meeting was that we would have a public meeting in the station house building.
Okay.
So people can actually take a look at the facility, do some brainstorming as to what they would like to see included. Make sure that the stakeholder group is wide, because we certainly don't want to limit members of the community groups that could use a facility. There was also discussion, for instance, to pick on the good group, Hope Mountain Center, for instance. There's been a lot of talk over the discussion on this project that the Hope Mountain Center could potentially be a tenant, but I think we have to clearly, as a district, define what a tenant is, and it's probably very unfair to include the Hope Mountain Center and say not afford the Arch Group an opportunity to you know, set up their camp there because they have some housing issues they have to worry about now because they're you know, they don't have the lease to pay for their facility that they were using. So you know, we kind of have to make it an all-inclusive use facility in the basement for sure, if we decide to immediately make use of the basement. So I think the public input session will probably be a reasonably long one. It would take place at the station house. It would probably give us some good ideas as to what elements should be included in the completed project. So, and there was also like a couple members of the public said that maybe the you know, district hall is not the best venue for that. I respectfully disagree, but you know, if we can include the station house, that's a good place as well. So,
Thank you. I think we're moving a step forward here, but just wondering, so the design build idea clearly been brought up before, but a good idea. I appreciate Councillor Smith bringing that up again. I like to see that happen because of course that would cover off some of the concerns that some of us have in terms of getting an actual visual drawing and looking at it a little better of what our budget's gonna look like. And if it's a phased approach, I'm fine with that. That's originally what we had anticipated. I'm absolutely fine with that. But if we get a screaming deal on somebody that's gonna do a design build, maybe, you know, maybe that will change. Maybe we'll jump forward a little quicker like we did with the skateboard park and all that other stuff up there, all those appliances. So, you know, if we have it where we do phase 1, 2, and 3, and phase 2 starts rolling into phase 3, that's fine with me. I'm sure with anybody else too. So can we agree that we would look for an RFP for design build? Like, is that something we can agree on?
Well, I think first we identify what we want. We want the final product identified. You can't go with design build
But
and you have
we
no
can't
idea.
unless we get some.
Well, that's where the stakeholders come in.
consultation.
We have to have stakeholder consultation.
Right.
Identify what is required in the final
Mhm.
facility. And that is one of the reasons we pressed the pause button, because there was ambiguity attached to what do we want the final facility to look like? Who will the end users be, like in the bottom floor? I think we need clarity there, and we gotta make some tough decisions, and I'm in the mood to make decisions, because otherwise we're gonna be sitting here 6 months from now. So, you know, a proper stakeholder consultation, but I'm gonna get back to, we have to get this building, get the exterior envelope so that it is weather resilient, because there's a certain quality of finish that's going to be required to preserve this building, and that is not attached to what's going to happen to the inside of the building. I think that's really important that we identify that ahead of time. That's my personal opinion. If it was my own personal project and I was on a limited budget, I would say let's get the exterior fixed up to a level that will survive in the long term and be aesthetically pleasing in the long term. And then if we want to, on the inside, do a phased approach, it's very possible, but we really can't do a phased approach on the exterior. It's got to be done in one shot, I think logically. And given the interesting weather patterns we have here, the sooner that gets done, I think the better it is for the project. Because doing that in the winter is probably, you won't get the best quality of work. It's probably going to cost a lot more to get it done. And you know, it's also, I think, from a public appeal point of view, it's nice to see progress. Once the exterior is fixed up the way we need it, then we already have folks interested in helping volunteer get the parking lot area and the ingress and egress areas properly done. So I think momentum can build fairly quickly once we have the exterior fixed up. Personal opinion. Councillor Stewart.
So, just so I understand what you're saying, is that we should look at the 215 that's in the budget currently and make a decision to use that for the exterior finishing and put it up to tender or Peter, whoever that goes.
Design build.
Do not
Just-
see on
I beg your pardon?
Oh, sorry, that was me.
Oh, sorry,
I would say, I would think we should do an RFP design build even for the exterior.
even for the exterior?
Because you might get a different look on the specs too, that you can get a look at too.
Are we looking at keeping it looking the same, as close to
Yeah.
the same as possible?
Well, I mean, that's something we could identify that during the stakeholder consultation too. You know, what the community is looking for. Maybe, do they want to stick to a traditional railway station look or a different look? But I'm just really keen on getting that exterior envelope done properly to a reasonable quality, because there's no point doing any work inside unless we have the exterior done properly.
And using the 215 to do that, to make that happen?
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I understood.
Which could be phase 1, and the interior could be phase 2.
Yeah. Councillor Miller.
So the original phased approach was to get the interior done to a level of occupancy and then work on everything else. Is that not a possibility anymore? Is the exterior the main priority all of a sudden because of the condition of it, or what is the Why is the decision being taken?
Well, there's no decision being taken. I'm as an individual.
Discussion being brought that way, I guess.
Well, I mean, as an individual on council, I have the right to bring forward ideas that I think have merit. So that's what I'm doing. I think we, logically, let's get this exterior fixed up to a point where the building is not an embarrassment to the community. Fix her up, make her look sharp outside, and then if we do some internal tweaking, it's also logical to assume that volunteers are going to be a little more motivated to work in a nice heated interior as opposed to getting dripped on in the rain. So I think from a point of view of getting local skilled help, it's probably going to be a lot easier to mobilize volunteers for interior work once a clear plan has been identified. So that's the first thing. Yeah, Mr. Perloski.
No, Councilor Davenport ranks me.
Or Counselor.
Counselor Cross.
She does, you're right, so do I.
Get away.
The double Ds.
You might need some new glasses there, Mr. Perloski.
So I just like to say that for me, makes sense to do now that it's so gutted so far, it would now make sense to do the outside because the windows and the doors and the security, and we don't wanna start doing nice stuff inside and then have any issues with anything, so I'm thinking also the outside now because of that, that's the reason. Just for the security, the weather, and making it habitable will be a lot easier if the exterior has proper windows and security.
Now also, as council will recollect, there was initial discussion about removing the siding, putting new siding up, but there was also, once the walls on the inside were taken down, there was a clear indication that actually the siding is part of the structural integrity of the building, because there's not a shiplap structure, traditional shiplap structure used. So leaving the siding up, putting new siding on top is the way to go. And that, of course, also mitigates the amount of expense because we don't have to dispose of the old siding and so on and so forth.
Sorry,
Oh, you're sorry.
Yeah,
Councillor
so-
Daigle, Councillor Erickson.
thank you. I guess I'm seeing it a little differently in the sense that the siding, is the siding the top priority? The siding can still function and move to maybe phase 2, but maybe it's the windows and doors that need to be replaced. The siding can remain, and then the remainder of the money can go towards the inside to get people moved, and then the second phase would be the siding. I'm just thinking that, I think windows and doors are important because the windows are old, the doors are old. So replace those, use the remainder of the money for the interior to get the occupants in there, and then phase 2 would be to do the siding. I don't know the condition of the siding, if that can last for another year or 18 months. I'm just wondering, how to expand that, because if we spend all of this money on windows, doors, and siding, now it's still another year before we have any occupants in that building. Whereas if we do partial, then at least they can move in.
Okay, Councillor Erickson and Councillor Smith.
Just to respond to that, usually when you do the windows, you have to alter the siding that's on there. So when you take the windows out, you usually put the siding on, because you have to know what kind of siding you're putting them in to make the windows. The window design, when they design the windows, the siding is taken into consideration. Now, another thing, just to correct, I was mistaken at one council meeting over taking the siding off, but I was up there with Kevin, and the siding on the long walls are actually part of the structure. The end wall, the siding has been doubled up, and I looked at the end of it, thinking that there's shiplap and then siding. So we went over there, and Kevin was right. The siding is integral to the building, so we'd have to put over the siding over top of the original siding. That has to happen.
Yeah, but that's actually a plus.
That's a plus. We just strap it and then put it over top.
Yeah. Councillor Smith.
In that, on the one piece that you brought up earlier, Kevin, that for the $220,000 that they roughly said, would that have been with taking the old siding off and dealing with the lead paint situation on that? Because if we're not dealing with that, obviously now, I know there's a lead paint situation on the building, we're probably considerably bringing that cost down from there. If it did, I'm not sure.
Through you, your worship, I don't think it would bring that cost down. There's only certain portions of the building that The existing siding is actually technically sheathing.
Oh, okay.
The end walls, the upper floor where it's shingled, that would all have to come off. So while it is a plus, because I think some of the siding that is on there that is sheathing, it does have the lead paint, and therefore by not removing that, we're not dealing with a lead abatement concern. We're actually covering it up, and if we put some Tyvek paper on it, then it's sealed and it's not available for human touch. So I don't think, to answer your question, I don't think that actually alters the value of doing the siding and the building doors.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dunlop, you were on
Yeah. Keep listening for a bit.
well, just, Councilor Stewart.
Okay, I'm just curious about the rural dividend fund that is coming up again in October. If we start doing the exterior of the building, let's say that's what we're gonna do for our phased approach, can we apply for the rural dividend in October, or is it considered starting the project?
Through you, your worship, if we put out an RFP for design build and received submissions, that wouldn't be considered starting the work. That would be in preparation for a grant, let's say.
But
So
if we
it's
do
similar to
the
what we did
exterior, is
If we
that-
actually start the exterior work, then technically we've started the project.
So we're out for the grant?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Your worship, I think the public consultation can be well facilitated, and in fact, I suggest what we do is we present to the public and the stakeholders the present concept of the building, using the existing drawings and elevations. Let you know, it was gonna be, and still is envisioned, Advantage tourism, museum, offices. Currently, there'd be potential tenants at the bottom, et cetera. Here's the concept as is. So we would ask them things like, is the overall concept good? What are the suggestions? What are the priorities? As council has mentioned, is the priority to gain occupancy and working of the tourist center and the museum ASAP? Or is the priority to get the exterior done ASAP with the money in the budget? Questions like that, and I think if we start at the current state of the concept, it will be easier moving forward than everyone trying to brainstorm maybe what it should look like, because we have a pretty good idea. What we can do is we can move forward clearly with, if council decides, I mean, you've got $215,000 in the current budget. Get the public input, see what meshes with council's views, take some final decisions, and then obviously, is it a phased approach, is it an all-in-one approach? Again, we can ask the public, you can decide. And I'll refer to my esteemed colleague here, Kevin, as far as RFPs go, there can be investigations in RFPs to have them formulated in such a way that they're priced and designed for either an all-at-once and a phased approach. Am I correct? If you're to do it all at once, how much would it cost? What would it look like? If you're going to phase it, with the priority being A or B, inside, outside, et cetera, how much would it cost? What would the next phase look like? Et cetera, et cetera. So there's scope to work there. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin.
No, you're correct. We have them option out different aspects of the building, and we would then roll those into subsequent phases.
Right.
So I'm sensing, there are a lot of questions, and we're at a bit of a plateau here. Maybe the way to move forward then is for us to come back to council on the 25th with the draft questions and points to bring forth to the public consultation. You can review them, you can add to them, change them, subtract them, whatever, but you can have a confident feeling moving forward when we go to public consultation, the right questions are being asked. We'll schedule that for August in the Station House, by mid-August, roughly Station House, and then we'll carry on from there. We get the feedback. I think as per the schedule of September, you were going to get the feedback anyway. And then more council decisions can be taken.
Councilor Crowe.
Thanks to you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Do you have a sense of how long staff will need to do a grant application? Like if we have the consultation in August for the public, feedback to council, Like, how's that working?
Well, you know, I don't necessarily, I guess the point on the grant application, we've already been there, staff had a grant application ready. There was not the stomach to apply for the grant at that time. So I don't really see why we're doing this again. That's just personal opinion. The numbers aren't gonna get any smaller. The more people we ask, the more features will be included, the more expensive the project's gonna get. People aren't going to say, well, take this out, take that out. They're gonna want to, obviously, because they're excited about the project, they're gonna add features. This project will only get more expensive if we do that. I mean, I think what would be very interesting and this is, I'm focusing on the exterior again, my apologies. It's not all about the exterior look, obviously, it's about, you know, the soul that's inside, but I think getting prices on the exterior work would actually be very simple. I mean, you can essentially phone up any window contractor and say how much to install this quality window in that building. That's a very common, Mr. Dickin could probably do that by the 25th, phone 3 reputable window installation companies and say how much. Simple, like any person who owns a house could do. And then to get a square footage number on the siding and doors and so on and so forth. I would personally be very keen on having some firm numbers on what the exterior envelope will cost to get up to reasonable standard. And then we can really talk about, you know, the kinds of monies we have left and the kinds of monies we need to go on track. Because I'm not personally in favor of leaving the exterior, you know, it's like doing a tune-up on your car, but it's rusting out. You know, if you don't have a solid body, you're really not doing much to the interior of it. So, Councilor Carroll.
Thanks. Sorry, but I believe we already have a motion of council that we will look at it in the fall. Is that not correct?
There is a suggested council,
That we would entertain. There was no binding motion.
No, the reason that we canceled the first round was because we didn't have a drawing or any kind of sense of what the cost would be and all that stuff. So the thought was that we would cancel that, put a halt on it, and we would actually look at what the real costs are going to be, possibly through an engineering or whatever, and we would get some proper numbers. We would get a physical visual, and we would get some public feedback. I think that's what really we were looking at.
Well, true. We could look at that. I think the.
But it's a motion of council, that's the point.
Yeah, but my point is that the more people we ask, the more elements will be included because we're expanding the potential users. The project will not get less costly, it's going to get more costly. So my point is if council did not have the stomach to apply for the grant that we had on the table that staff prepared for us a month ago, what is the likelihood of council having the stomach due to financial limitations for applying for something that's probably going to be a much larger number? That's my question.
But Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
we do know that the big part of this equation was we did not go to the public for any feedback, and we wanted to be inclusive. And if there is going to be money spent, as you put it, for the stomach of council to stomach it, that we want to make sure that we're doing it in the best interest of what everyone wants or the majority wants. And that's why, because it's a big sum. We didn't have any firm costs. They were all over the map, unfortunately, and we didn't have any drawing. And it's council's good intentions, but guess what? We weren't really cohesive on any of it. And so I think we were getting, I personally didn't feel that we had any direction. And that was the point. We were supposed to get some direction, not just go make a phone call and get 3 numbers from a window guy, but to actually get somebody to do a report that says this is the numbers, because this is what council and the community want. They want this building that looks like a station house with a nice parking lot and up and down and a firewall in between, and this is what it's going to cost, because we go design build and we say this is the money we now have in our budget because we all agree and the public's on board. That's what I thought we were doing.
Well, and I think the other point to mention is the rural dividends fund is not an infrastructure grant. So what is important to take note of is unless it's an all-inclusive community facility that has multiple community agencies partnering in, like if we bring the arts group in and they're housed in there, if we bring, you know, the Mountain Center in there, if we have a half dozen groups that can make use of a shared space in the basement, then I think we have a chance of qualifying for this fund. But if we do not, then we're just wasting time, because it is not a, you know, infrastructure grant by definition. So we have to be very inclusive and very innovative for us to even have a chance of getting this.
Your Worship, just to amplify on that, the program's about policy, or program delivery. So for example, to focus on delivering tourism services, economic development services, and other community services, those will be the successful grant application features. You're absolutely correct, it's not an infrastructure-based system.
Yeah.
But it would be in that scope, service delivery.
Okay. I guess my thought is we should send some clear direction to the next council meeting for staff as to some value added that we can digest at the next council meeting.
Through you. If you wanted to get a quick price on the exterior, I wouldn't say quick price, that's probably the wrong word, but a price that I know some of you give you really quick. Larry's Industries out of Chilliwack, they would come up and give you a price on the exterior, and we'd have it probably by next budget meeting. I know they, and that would give us a fairly accurate, they're usually a little bit high on the numbers, but I've had them do a lot of work for me, and they do a real good job. You gotta be on, but you could get a good price quickly. I think that probably within 2 weeks you get some good numbers. So you can know what the outside would cost if you're thinking of that, and just for information. That's one that I know would do it quite readily for us.
So you would, your suggestion would be to direct staff to get 3 prices from
different companies.
Yeah.
They do the windows, they do the doors, they do the exterior. They have people do it.
It's a bit tough.
Okay.
Isn't that idea contrary to the design build idea then, if you sort of quote?
It is, but if you want to do the exterior, you want the price.
I think, I like the design build idea a lot better.
They may even do that.
Well, then they can wait for that process to take place. I don't think we need that now. I mean, I'm curious, like anybody is, as to what the costs are going to be, but I thought that everybody here sort of was on the same page that the design build was a good idea. So if you're gonna ask them for quotes now, that's completely contrary to the design build idea.
Well, I'm opposed to that. My thought is exterior envelope is of primary importance. That's my personal opinion.
Well, I agree.
So I'm not obviously getting a motion on the table to that effect, so I guess that idea kind of dies a natural death, but that's just my input as a member of council.
I would say pick the important part of it, but take that important part and put that out for a design build type RFP. Whatever that important part becomes, whether it's the exterior, the interior, whatever. I'm not picking one or the other, I'm just saying the design build part of it was the important part, as opposed to getting 3 quotes.
Well, my obsession with the exterior is that we will probably all agree that the exterior has to be finished to a certain standard. And what happens inside the building essentially stays in the building. You know, there's really, I mean, most people will say if we invest taxpayers' money in the building, it has to be durable, it has to be reasonably energy efficient, yada, yada, yada. Good windows, good siding. And when we figure out what the exterior costs, then we know what kind of monies we can spend on the interior. That's just, but okay, the horse is dead, I officially dismount. Councilor Dowd.
Well, I'm just gonna, go forward with that thought. If, it sounds like the majority of us are sort of on the same page as the exterior, getting the exterior done. I mean, I can get behind that, because I agree with that. It sounds like that $215,000 will be eaten up in all of that, right? So it doesn't even feel like we need to go to public consultation, because if we're all in agreement that that's the first phase, well then that's the first phase, that's where we're gonna spend this money. So it sort of, I mean, we can do public consultation, because then we'll know what the other elements are gonna look like. But if we're feeling like that's the critical piece, then that's what the design build will be at that $215,000. It will be doors, windows, and the exterior. That's just what I'm sort of hearing. I'm not sure if I'm hearing different things. So.
I'm just keen on getting some
Yeah,
value
no,
added out of this
yeah.
meeting
And
to
I
bring forward to
I
the
can
next
get
council meeting.
behind the whole exterior getting that done, that would be phase one. Phase two would be the interior, the design of the user groups, all of those elements. And that would be the next phase that would then go out for RFP for a design build for the interior scope of that work. But that wouldn't happen until next year. Is that, that's what I'm hearing.
Because of the budget.
Mr. Dickham.
Through you, your worship. One concern I do have that hasn't come up tonight is we will be heading into the winter season soon, and without insulation in the building, I would be afraid to go through the winter without heating that building. So we may be experiencing mold in the building, which could cause us some problems. So another thing to keep in mind is, as we head into winter, we're gonna have a building sitting there that we're not gonna heat. And I don't even think I can't be certain, but I don't think we're there yet with the heating system. I think there's amendments to be made to that just to get it going again. But in order to insulate the building on the inside, we need to do everything that goes into the walls, including amend the plumbing where required, the electrical where required, before we get the insulation in. So that's another thing to consider is if we were to go ahead and spend our budget on the exterior of the building, we still have a building that we can't heat or insulate.
Can eat, but be very pricey. Yeah. Councilor Crown.
Okay, so thanks for that extra food for thought. But anyhow, so what I think, and I still think, is that, yes, we do need public consultation, of course, because we want to, if we do go for design build, which I believe we need to, we still need to give some sort of budget and overall sense to whoever the RFPs, whenever it's written, we have to give something in there. It's not just gonna be a purple building with a roof and 3 windows, so obviously, so it's gotta be something in there. So, in saying that, if we get 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or however many people that come back to us for the exterior, if that's what we go out for first, then I still would like to see and hear from the public of what their opinion is on that, because we also want to go to the next phase and do the interior, and we want to get feedback for the whole project, and then decide, yes, outside, yes, inside, whatever the priority will be, what will look like, depending on what we need to do. So yes, public consultation, yes, design build, yes, limited budget, and then we'll know how much money we will need for the next phase, for the next year's budget.
Can I ask a question for clarification on design build? When you put that in the RFP, you don't put how much you want to spend. No, you just put out, these are the features that we need done, and then they put a number to that.
But they always seem.
I think Councilor Erickson, Councilor Miller, yeah.
See, I think, to me, this is a very simple project. If we would just get a drawing, we wouldn't have any of this fighting going on, this debate. We haven't done. It tells you on the drawing what needs to be done. Now, the design build, if they come up with a drawing, that's what we need. We need something on paper. Like you said, we need something for the public to look at. And we don't have it, and we're fighting that. And that's why we're sitting here. We've been sitting here since last year. If we would have had a design drawn out, it would have been simple. We've been going forward. Then you know what the costs are. Then you can say, no, I don't want that. It's too expensive. We're going to go down to this. But we don't have that, and that's the real struggle. It's quite a simple, it's not a very big building, it's only 2,000 square feet or 3,100 square feet. It's not that big a building, and but we don't have any. But if we could find someone, that's why I suggested Larry's Industry. They'd come, they'd take the measurements, and they'd draw it up, and then show you what you have, and then show you, there's all different varieties of windows. And if no one tells them what kind of window to put in, we may be hooked on some cheap window or doors, you know, so that's why I think the architect is so important, or somebody that's gonna draw it up, so we know exactly what we get, then we know the money, what's gonna cost. I think that's why we're spending this, because we don't know how we're going. But I'm totally in favor of getting the exterior done. That is usually the first thing you do, you get the exterior done, and then you work on the interior in the wintertime.
Mr. Dick?
Through you, your worship. Yeah, there's two, if you wanna, consider getting drawings done, there's two ways to deal with it, getting an independent architect, or through the design build RFP. You would request that, proponents, when they submit their proposals, they have a drawing, that supports their build.
I agree.
But, you know, you'll end up with different drawings, you wouldn't have, you know, you'd have to decide which one you like the best.
That's the whole point.
But you would have options.
Councilor Miller?
Yeah, on the design build, not putting a number to it, I always thought that there was still a budgeted figure for any type of project, and that other things we've done, I think we've had the same question asked before, is maybe you don't put that out there in the documentation, but there's nothing stopping them from calling the district and saying, what is your budget for this project? So they have some sort of idea what they're working with. I don't know, I just thought that's how it went, but.
So if we were to hire an architect, that's the first thing the architect would say. What's your budget? That's the very first thing he's gonna ask you. And I imagine the design build will do the same thing, what's your budget? You can say $500,000 or $600,000 or $200,000. And then they work with that if they can.
I guess my question on the whole architect thing is, we had talked about some pretty large numbers with regards to the cost of an architect. You're mentioning that the gentleman you deal with, or the company you deal with, or your brother, 10 to 15 grand would take care of it.
That's what my brother told me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would actually love to see the architect tell us, hey, this is what it's going to cost us. This is what we would charge you as a district.
Well, that's what you have to give them.
I mean, if it would only cost 10 to 15,000 to get an architect to include all the elements of what this building should look like, I would personally be very excited about that. If it's 100,000, obviously that's not a necessarily good use of money for a structure that's already standing, so.
That's the way you get them to come in.
Councilor Miller?
Thank you. I can definitely see the value in some sort of drawings, you know, whether they're the mechanical drawings or construction drawings. But I can't, I mean, we've had the quantity surveyor, I think it was, he suggested 10% of the project, so that's why we're looking at $100,000. You know, I think earlier today you mentioned less than $20,000, and now you're saying $10,000 to $15,000. Well, is it possible to find out what those drawings would cost us?
We have to get a price. They would come up and look at it.
Yeah, so I do see the value in those drawings, because that's the visual that everybody wants, and maybe we can figure out how to do that. Or is that going back on that whole RFP process again?
It's under 25.
I don't know. Because we keep coming back to that every topic we've talked about.
I mean, I would personally be very, if your architect acquaintance is suggesting a, you know, $15,000 to $20,000 window for comprehensive architectural plans, when others are saying 100 grand, if they want to do it for 15 grand, I mean, obviously that would be quite the deal for us, and if they want to move ahead on that, then it would make a lot of sense, so. Maybe we could pass the contact information on to Mr. Dicken, and he can do some research on that. Mr. Dicken?
I was just gonna say that, you know, council wished I could put out an RFQ for architect proposals. It's non-binding, and it would take me probably about 4 weeks by the time I did the site tour with the proponents.
Yeah.
So what we have now, those drawings that were done by Kirkhoff, what are those considered?
I think they'd be considered conceptual drawings with some minor architectural elements, those being that of the bathrooms.
You know, like, it's not like we're starting fresh. The building walls are there. We have the structure, we understand what that's all about. It's the rest of it that we're looking for, the fit and finish, I guess, like, say, where do the toilets go and then the plumbing, all that kind of stuff. I assume, I don't know how this all works, of course, I've never done it before, but that's why I see some value in that, but it all has to work around the budget, the project scope, and then our priorities, of course, right?
Well, I guess my suggestion would be if Councilor Erickson's contact the architects, if they want to take on this project for 15 grand, when other architects are looking at, in some ways I would say call their bluff. If they're, you know, if they're saying 15 grand would cover the complete architectural drawings for this project, and they're willing to put that in writing, then it would make sense just to go with it.
But I was telling you that this is what my brother told me, he looked at it. He said,
Well, I think it'd be good to, so that this issue is put to bed, so we don't have this $15,000
all you have to do
on.
is get an RFP or RFQ from an architect, and you'll know what's gonna cost you, 3 of them. They'll tell you quickly. And they'll use those structural drawings. that
But
we
it's a
have.
month down the road again, so.
It's going to be, no matter who you do. Everybody's busy. It's gonna be at least a month, don't you think?
I would say it'd be a month just to get the proposal in,
Yeah.
and then if we decided that we wanted to engage the services of that architect, we could have a long waiting period depending on market conditions.
3 months.
No, you could get an architectural draftsperson as well, they have firms in Chilliwack that do that, so.
For this size of a project, we probably couldn't get a junior architect to do the work. I don't think we need a.
This wouldn't be such a Pandora's box. I would get my sister to volunteer, who's an architect, but I don't think she'd like me after it, but.
That's what you need.
Just a question for clarification. Kirkhoff did the original design. Are they not available? Can we not call them and ask them what it would cost for architect design on that? Or what the cost would be?
That's certainly an option.
Yeah, I mean, they already have the scope of it probably in their computer. What is the cost for them to do a more comprehensive design?
Assuming that they have that capacity in-house.
Yeah, I don't know.
They're a pretty large company, I'm sure they would. Can we have that information for the next council meeting?
Phone call.
Which is 2 weeks from today.
We can ask Kirkhoff.
I can contact Kirkhoff and.
Because that would obviously be the lowest hanging fruit, they already have all the information.
They've got the base drawing that they could.
And plus you can give the information for this other fellow.
Do we know what it costs for those drawings? That was in last year's class, so we don't know what those drawings cost, it's not in our budget. Do you have any idea?
It was part, your worship, it was part of the overall cost for the Kirkhoff study, so it wasn't a separate item, I don't believe. We'd have to dig into that though to find out an exact costing. So we don't have that to hand.
I don't believe that the district was built directly by Kirkhoff Engineering. I believe that it was a subcontractor of Bartley Fletcher Contracting. So it's Bartley engaged that architect as part of his proposal. I mean, certainly I could approach Bartley and ask him how much those drawings were.
So for the next council meeting, you'll probably be able to get some numbers on how much it would cost to get up-to-date plans once the stakeholder consultation is taken care of and council identifies the final product.
I will attempt to get a price from Kirkhoff Engineering in that time.
Ballpark figure. So we get some value added for the next meeting.
Your worship, would it not be also useful if we could get the information from Councillor Erickson as perhaps a check on Kirkhoff, just to see in comparison in the meantime?
Yeah, I mean, if that architect is willing to do it for 15,000, that would be pretty easy,
But right here, the names are.
Or less.
or less, yeah,
If
that
they're
would be
interested
nice.
in coming up to vote.
Yeah, because then we can identify that as a good idea or a, you know, a topic we don't have to necessarily bring in.
So are we kind of clear as mud now? You know what we're doing?
Yes.
I guess the only thing I can think of going that route is we've if we then want to see what, ideally we want to get 3 quotes by policy, so I guess we're losing 2 weeks if we just engage Kirkhoff. Perhaps I invite Kirkhoff to quote and seek another couple of quotes.
Well, this guy here.
Well, if you have the contact from Councillor Erickson, and then there's a couple of firms in Chilliwack that are pretty active, they could probably zip up here and give you a quick quote.
I think we should stick to the policy on how we do things there. I don't wanna just grab people if you know, that's asking an opinion for one thing, but you put it out there, you let it be a fair process for everybody.
That's right.
Everybody on this.
Absolutely.
I don't have a problem with using Kirkhoff again for a ballpark figure, but if you wanna get down to brass tacks and be serious about it, then you have to put it out just like you do everything else.
That's right.
Okay, that's not a 2-week timeframe now.
Yeah.
We're back to the month.
But in the 2-week timeframe, I don't think there's anything wrong with, because we don't have any idea right now. If they can give us a ballpark as to what it would be, at least, then we have some sort of an idea better than no idea.
Phone calls, networking. You can do it, Kevin. We have faith in you.
I have reservations about ballpark because I think we're at the point where we want some
I
solid
want
numbers
facts.
here. Ballpark is going with 10% because that's Canadian Institute of Architects. Based on that size of a project, that's what the ballpark would be. That's what Mr.
But that would be
Cahill,
fresh
the consultant.
construction.
Well, when I asked, I came up with 10% extrapolating from that website. And then I asked Mr. Cahill, without telling him what my thoughts were, what would you think an architect for this particular project, which he was familiar with, obviously, and he said 10%. And I said, well, that's exactly what I thought, so. So that's ballpark, and I don't think we're interested in ballpark anymore. I think we want cold hard facts here.
Well, I guess tying in that then, if it takes you 3 weeks to a month to get to final, let's do the RFQ. We got 2 weeks till the next council meeting anyways. If you do the RFQ, you'll probably get information back from Kirkhoff very quickly because they're sort of, in some ways, have the home court advantage on the project because they've been involved. And then the maximum would give us an additional 2 weeks beyond the next council meeting before we get final figures on another couple of firms. So,
And I think that timeline works out well because should it take a month to get the proposals, which is what the date will set for the closing date, would be around a month from now. By that time, we will have hopefully done the public consultation. So we will have some feedback from the public and or stakeholders as to what they may want to see in the building. So we would have then proposals from an architect as to roughly what that building is going to cost to get drawings. And then we have the information from the public in hand as to what we'd like to see out of the building. So the timing may work out well.
well, and even tying into that, an even more convenient timing would be if 2 weeks after the next council meeting, we identify the architect we want to use, if it's affordable, and then we would have a public consultation meeting after we hire the architect or architectural draft person or what have you, if it's affordable. Because it would actually be neat to have an architect or architectural draft person at the public consultation meeting to listen to all the
Getting a
impact.
sense.
To listen to all the public feedback. That would be the ideal, perfect storm of expertise there.
That's right.
So is it agreement of council, the RFQ for just to test the waters on what it would cost to get an architect or architectural draft person commissioned?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the first question they're going to ask, Councillor Erickson suggested, would be, what is your budget? So we just
I was just going to mention that. I think we should, I really think, thinking about this project over the last 4 months.
Did you lose some sleep over it, Mr. Dick?
No sleep.
That's good.
No, a few bad dreams, but.
We won't get into those.
I think, I would encourage council to come up with a budget. Because even when if we are ready to select an architect, that's the first thing they're gonna ask us. And if we don't have that readily available for them, then we're losing time, which we don't really have at this point, I think.
Not if we want to get done before winter. Yes.
Cause I don't think 215,000 is gonna get you anywhere near close,
To the outside it will. We're phasing it in,
but then you're still dealing with a building that's not insulated,
that's true.
so.
Has the building ever been insulated though? Like, I thought that when they pulled the drywall down, they realized there was no insulation, so they've been doing it for the last bunch of years. Survived all those winters. Harsher winters.
Oak Standard, 1934.
I don't know what was in there for insulation.
There was nothing.
It was out at the time I was getting involved.
In some sense,
Sawdust.
Probably is.
Counselor Smith.
This isn't a motion, but a statement that maybe we should look at doing the outside of the building with the design build that we were talking about earlier. Engage Mr. Dickin into finding out what it's gonna cost us to get that heating system back up and going just for this winter, if we do get the outside of the building done. Get what it's gonna cost us to get it's only gonna be $5,000 to get the heat back up and going for the rest of this winter, to get us, so we're not filling it full of mold and get ventilation going just for the winter. And then we get back onto a phased approach with this building. Get our public consultation in, maybe we only want the first floor done for phase 1's obviously outside, phase 2, top floor only, phase 3, what people are gonna be involved in the basement. And then we know we have to get more money for the fire separation. Who's gonna be involved down there? Maybe there's gonna be chainsaw carvings down there, we don't know. That's a process that we have along with that public consultation. But I do agree with Wilford that we do need to have that outside going and fixed. And that, now that Kevin brought up with the heating situation, I think we do need to find out if it's only gonna cost us a couple $1,000 to get that, or it might not be anything, but to get it going so we do not get mold in there over the winter. We still got that situation on our heads right now. No matter if we get an architect or not, we have that situation to deal with now. So that's kind of my thoughts on that before.
So how much budget?
Mr. Cordes.
You're
Were you
the man, you're on
stretching,
top.
were you stretching, or did you want to add your expertise there? If this was childbirth, I think it's time for a cesarean.
We've had triplets.
Quadruplets, I think.
Well, again, I have no idea how much this project might come in at.
Well, we're gonna have to set a budget, that's the point.
Again, the reserves is your option
For this budget.
for this budget year. Yeah. And I guess the other, in order to avoid draining the reserves, if council recalls, there was the $100,000 that we had budgeted for unallocated capital. That some of that could be used if we have to add to the 215,000. So either way, whatever council's going to decide on the budget for this, there would have to be a resolution, because you're either going to be drawing from the reserve or you're going to be actually stipulating what some of that unallocated capital would be used towards. So again, to give you a number, I wouldn't know until the figures come in from the architect. So if you wanted to put a round figure in order to attract the architect, you could say 400,000 or something, and we'd be able to fund that. I guess it really, again, I can't give you a firm number because I don't know what this is going to come in at. I can only give you what's available.
Yeah. Counselor Smith, Stu, and then Crowell.
Okay, I think when I made the statement earlier, I think the 215,000 that we've had in our budget for this year, in 2016 is the number I think we should stick with, without going into reserves, for the phase 1 of the outside of the project. And then if Kevin finds out that it's gonna cost an extra $5,000 to fix the heating for the year, then we have to maybe come to Dale and say, do a recommendation on that. We pull some from the reserves to do that portion of that. But for the whole project, I don't think we're gonna see us get the outside of the building done and the inside of it for what we have in reserves and in the budget right now, until we figure out the scope that we wanna do. But let's get moving on the budget item that we do have this money here. I don't wanna say let's just spend it all, but I think we should get the ball rolling, otherwise we're gonna miss the whole summer. And then we're sitting there in the middle of fall going, we don't have heat and our siding's done too. So I think I'm gonna make the motion that we take the $215,000 that we do an RFP process with drawings from the contractors to fix up the outside of the building to a full standard with windows, doors,
Design build.
and design build.
Wait. Well, we can do a motion recommended to council, so, yeah, motion,
Committee.
motion of the committee, ratified council.
Yeah, council
Yeah.
will run.
So that's, moving to a second? Okay, Councilman Miller, second.
I just have, alright. So Dale, you were saying that there's $100,000 in unallocated
At this point in time,
at this
yeah.
point in time. So I'm thinking, take the 215 and 100,000, now you got 315. And then that potentially could get you to the heating and the insulation part of it, right? Because if we're thinking that 220 is gonna be the window siding and doors. So I was thinking before you made the motion to add the 100,000 to the 215.
Sorry. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
They have to be careful though, I think, because once we start doing the heating and that, then we also have to make sure that we're not duplicating anything by missing out where the plumbing and the electrical's going, right? So I think we stick to phase one, get our design build stuff happening so we actually know what we're looking at for exterior and interior, then we know where all that stuff goes.
But I was thinking that the question that the architect was gonna have was how much for your budget, what is the architect needing to know that he needs to design? So we're gonna say it's the exterior and it's the plumbing and heating elements for $315,000. I mean, I don't know, that's.
You know, I think one of the cautionary notes there is if we have a budget of 315 and it's public knowledge, that 315 will be sucked up pretty quick. Yeah, that's just coincidentally, a lot of contractors will come in close to the 315. So, you know, I think, yeah, just to provide, you know, respectful feedback on that, I think, Councillor Smith, you were talking about getting the heater functional so you can fire it up and keep the facility at a, you know, a reasonable heat level so that there's no mold building or what have you.
While we have our public consultation meetings there and everything else while we're doing this process.
So that there's no damage to the building minus the insulation.
No further cost, yes.
Yeah, so that's not to put in ducting or anything, just to get it so that you can fire up the heater.
Just a gas boiler.
Yeah, just to fire up the heater safely according to, you know, so it's up to code, you fire it up and get some heat in there and get the exterior envelope up to a reasonable standard. I'm a little apprehensive about adding 100,000 because that might get sucked up fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Well, if I may, Your Worship, as long as council knows that money is there available, if, you know, you don't even have to use all the 100,000. I mean, if
Yeah.
whatever they bring in comes in at 225, then you do a resolution to allocate only 15,000 or whatever, so.
Okay. So it sounds like we have a good motion on the table. Could we reread the motion?
We were gonna seek clarity from you.
Okay.
So you wanna set a budget of 215,000 to go to RFP for design build or drawings of the fashion on the exterior? And did you add to it and also get some heat to the
In
interior?
front of that, yes.
It was, if I
Going
can
out.
clarify, design build including drawings, not or.
Yeah.
That's a part of the requirement to include design.
Of the design build, yes.
Including
Good
drawings.
pick.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just for clarity,
Yes?
drawings on the entire scope of the project or drawings just on the
Exterior.
exterior?
Exterior.
Phase
Because
one
we don't know what the
is just-
scope of the inside is yet. We know that outside's gonna be there still.
I don't know, I think it has to be just the exterior at this point.
Okay. Motion's on the table, recommending to council, of course, no binding motions here, just recommendations to the regular council. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Thank you.
hallelujah.
Your worship, so with that in mind, just to clarify from us, we'll prepare information for the public consultation for the next council meeting. Any
Yeah.
questions, we'll ask. And then we'll look to schedule that with you. As far as an RFP for architectural services, that may now be premature. So that's not being directed, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's off the table.
but you will still check with Kirkhoff, correct, Mr. Dickon?
I can do so.
Yeah. This is the subject of low hanging fruit. Now, under the subject of adjournment, would anyone have opposition to that?
No, I move. Let's go.
Anyone opposed to that concept? Okay.
Okay. Closer to that, Brian.